There are battles in life that are not won by shouting, proving, arguing, or defending yourself. They are won by discipline. They are won by wisdom. And one of the greatest forms of wisdom is knowing when to remain silent. A narcissist feeds on reaction. They survive on emotional noise. Every explanation you give, every argument you enter, every attempt to make them understand becomes fuel for their manipulation. But when a person learns the power of silence, they take back control of their mind, emotions, and destiny. Silence is not weakness. Silence is self-mastery. It is the ability to refuse participation in confusion. It is emotional intelligence operating at the highest level. Many people think strength means always speaking. No, real strength is having the power to speak, but choosing peace over chaos. Today, you are going to learn the 8 situations where silence becomes your greatest protection, your greatest wisdom, and your greatest weapon against narcissistic manipulation. One of the greatest mistakes people make when dealing with a narcissist is believing they must respond to everything. They feel obligated to defend every accusation, explain every decision, correct every misunderstanding, and react to every insult. But what they fail to understand is that constant emotional reacting slowly drains the mind, weakens confidence, and steals inner peace. This is why silence becomes necessary. Silence is not simply about saying nothing. Silence is about protecting your emotional energy from people who are determined to exhaust it. Your emotional energy is one of the most valuable resources you possess. It affects your mental clarity, your health, your confidence, your focus, your relationships, and even your future decisions. When your emotional energy is constantly under attack, you begin living in survival mode. You overthink everything. You replay conversations in your mind. You become anxious before every interaction. Your peace disappears because your emotions are constantly being pulled in different directions. A narcissist understands this very well. They know how to create emotional confusion. They know how to provoke reactions. They know how to make you feel guilty, angry, defensive, frustrated, or emotionally unstable. Why? Because emotionally exhausted people are easier to control. This is why you must become disciplined with your responses. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves your defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves an explanation. Mature people understand that silence can preserve emotional strength better than endless arguments ever could. Think about how much energy people waste trying to convince toxic individuals to understand them. They explain themselves repeatedly, hoping clarity will change the situation. But manipulation is rarely about misunderstanding. Most narcissists understand exactly what you're saying. They simply continue the conflict because conflict gives them emotional power. The more emotional you become, the more control they feel they have over your mind. But silence changes the dynamic completely. When you stop reacting emotionally to every attack, you remove the reward they were expecting. You stop feeding the cycle. You stop giving them access to your peace. This is why emotionally disciplined people are difficult to manipulate. They are not controlled by every emotional storm around them. Many people believe silence means weakness because society often celebrates loud reactions. People think strength means always proving a point, always defending yourself, always having the final word. But true strength is emotional self-control. Anyone can react emotionally. Anyone can lose their temper. Anyone can argue. But not everyone can remain calm under pressure. Silence requires wisdom. There will be moments when a narcissist says something unfair about you. In those moments, your emotions will tempt you to react immediately. You will feel the urge to defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to expose their behavior. But sometimes the greatest protection for your peace is refusing to participate in the chaos altogether. You must learn the difference between responding with wisdom and reacting emotionally. An emotional reaction often creates more damage than the original problem. Once emotions take control, people say things they regret. They lose focus. They become drained for hours or even days because one toxic interaction consumed all their mental energy. This is why protecting your emotional energy must become a priority in your life. You cannot allow every negative person to have access to your mind. You cannot allow every manipulative conversation to steal your peace. If you give everyone emotional access to you, you will spend your life emotionally exhausted. Silence helps you maintain inner stability. When you choose silence instead of unnecessary conflict, you preserve your focus. You preserve your confidence. You preserve your emotional balance. And most importantly, you preserve your dignity. There is power in being emotionally unshaken. A narcissist often expects emotional chaos. They expect you to become angry, frustrated, defensive, or desperate for validation. But when you remain calm, silent, and emotionally grounded, it disrupts their expectations. Your silence communicates strength they cannot easily control. This does not mean you never speak. Wisdom is knowing when speaking adds value and when silence protects peace. Some conversations produce growth, others only produce exhaustion. You must become wise enough to know the difference. Your emotional energy should be invested into your purpose, your healing, your growth, your family, your dreams, and your peace of mind, not wasted on endless emotional battles with toxic people. Every day you wake up with limited emotional energy. The question is, where are you investing it? Are you spending it on arguments, drama, and emotional confusion? Or are you using it to build a peaceful, focused, and purposeful life? People who constantly react to narcissists often become emotionally drained without realizing it. Their joy decreases, their confidence weakens, their mental clarity disappears, and eventually they begin feeling emotionally tired all the time. But the moment you learn the power of silence, your life begins to change. You stop chasing explanations. You stop fighting unnecessary battles. You stop allowing toxic people to control your emotions. You become more peaceful, more focused, and more emotionally powerful. And that is the beauty of silence. It protects what chaos is trying to steal. A narcissist survives on emotional reactions the same way a fire survives on oxygen. This is why understanding emotional control is one of the most important lessons a person can ever learn. Many people think narcissistic behavior is only about arrogance, manipulation, or selfishness, but beneath all of that is a deep hunger for attention, validation, and emotional power over others. The narcissist constantly studies reactions because reactions make them feel significant. Every time you become angry, defensive, emotional, fearful, or desperate to explain yourself, they feel a sense of control. They measure their influence over you through your emotional responses. This is why silence becomes so powerful. Most people do not realize that every emotional outburst gives a narcissist information. When you react strongly, you reveal your emotional triggers. You reveal your insecurities, your fears, your wounds, and your frustrations. A narcissist pays attention to these details carefully because manipulation becomes easier when they know exactly what affects you emotionally. If criticism makes you angry, they will criticize more. If rejection makes you anxious, they will use distance to control you. If confusion makes you desperate for answers, they will continue creating confusion. They are constantly observing what gives them emotional leverage. This is why emotional discipline is not optional. It is protection. You must understand something important. Not every person who argues with you wants resolution. Some people want reaction. There are individuals who intentionally create conflict because emotional chaos gives them a sense of power. They feel important when they can disturb your peace. The moment they realize they can control your emotions, they begin believing they can control your life. That is why silence frustrates them. Silence removes the emotional reward they were expecting. When they provoke you and you refuse to react emotionally, they lose the satisfaction they were seeking. Your calmness becomes a mirror exposing their immaturity. Your self-control becomes evidence that their manipulation is losing effectiveness. This does not mean you never speak. Wisdom is not silence all the time. Wisdom is knowing when speech is useful and when silence is necessary. There are moments where responding only increases confusion. There are moments where defending yourself only feeds the manipulation. There are moments where your greatest victory is emotional restraint. A person who lacks self-control becomes easy to manipulate. Think about it carefully. If someone can make you angry whenever they want, they control part of your mind. If someone can destroy your peace with a few words, they possess emotional influence over you. But when you develop emotional discipline, something powerful happens. You stop becoming predictable. You stop giving people emotional access to your inner stability, and that changes everything. A narcissist expects emotional access. They expect you to chase, defend, explain, react, and emotionally collapse under pressure. But silence interrupts their strategy. Calmness disrupts their expectations. Emotional stability weakens their influence. This is why mature people do not react to everything. Immature people believe every insult deserves a response. Wise people understand that some battles are distractions sent to drain emotional energy. You cannot build a peaceful life while constantly reacting to foolishness. Every argument steals time. Every emotional outburst steals focus. Every unnecessary reaction steals peace. Your emotional energy is valuable. Protect it carefully. One of the greatest forms of strength is remaining composed while others try to provoke you. Anybody can lose control. Anybody can scream in anger. Anybody can react impulsively. But it takes wisdom to remain calm when emotions are being tested. And understand this clearly, silence is not weakness. Silence is controlled power. There is a difference between being silent because you are afraid and being silent because you are disciplined. Fearful silence comes from insecurity. Wise silence comes from strength. A strong person does not feel the need to prove themselves in every conversation. They do not feel pressured to respond to every accusation or every insult. They recognize that peace is more important than ego. Many narcissists become more aggressive when they stop receiving emotional reactions. Why? Because manipulation is failing. They may increase the drama, intensify the accusations, or create greater emotional pressure. But this is exactly where emotional maturity becomes critical. Do not allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. Do not allow toxic people to pull you into emotional chaos. A calm mind sees clearly. An emotional mind reacts blindly. The moment you stop feeding manipulation with emotional reactions, you begin reclaiming your power. You begin thinking more clearly. You begin protecting your peace. And most importantly, you begin realizing that your emotional stability does not have to depend on another person's behavior. That is freedom. True freedom is not controlling other people. True freedom is controlling yourself. It is reaching the point where manipulation no longer dictates your emotions. It is developing the discipline to remain peaceful even when others are determined to create chaos around you. And the day you master that level of emotional control is the day a narcissist begins losing their power over your life. One of the greatest signs of maturity is learning that not every argument deserves your participation. Many people waste years of their lives trying to win conversations that were never designed to bring peace, understanding, or truth. Especially when dealing with a narcissist, you must understand something very important. Their goal is often not communication, it is domination. They do not enter every conversation to solve problems. Many times they enter conversations to control emotions, create confusion, and pull you into emotional exhaustion. This is why wisdom is not proven by how loudly you speak. Wisdom is proven by what you choose to ignore. A narcissist understands that emotional people are easier to manipulate. The moment they can make you angry, defensive, frustrated, or desperate to prove yourself, they gain influence over your mind. That is why they will often create arguments over small things. They will twist your words, deny things they clearly said, interrupt you constantly, and suddenly change topics in the middle of discussions. You may walk into the conversation trying to solve a problem, but you leave feeling mentally drained, confused, and emotionally exhausted. Why? Because the argument was never about solutions. It was about control. Many people do not realize that some conversations are traps. They are emotional traps designed to pull you away from your peace. And if you are not careful, you will spend hours trying to explain yourself to someone who already decided not to understand you. There is a dangerous habit people develop when dealing with toxic individuals. They believe if they just explain themselves better, the narcissist will finally understand. But understanding is not always the problem. Sometimes manipulation is the problem. Some people understand exactly what you're saying, but they reject it because accepting truth would remove their power over you. This is why emotional discipline is necessary. You must learn the difference between healthy communication and emotional baiting. Healthy communication produces clarity, respect, listening, and growth. Manipulation produces confusion, frustration, circular arguments, and emotional chaos. A wise person can recognize when a conversation stops being productive. There comes a moment where maturity says, I do not need to continue this battle. That is not weakness. That is self-respect. Many people think walking away from pointless arguments means losing. No. Sometimes walking away is winning, because protecting your peace is greater than protecting your ego. A narcissist often wants you emotionally reactive because reactive people lose clarity. The angrier you become, the more mistakes you make. The more emotional you become, the more they can twist your reactions against you. Have you ever noticed how some narcissists remain strangely calm while provoking you? That is because they want your emotional explosion. Once you react emotionally, they may suddenly act innocent and portray you as unstable. This is why self-control becomes your protection. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can control your response. And your response determines whether you remain powerful or become emotionally trapped. There is strength in refusing to participate in unnecessary conflict. Every battle costs energy. Every argument drains emotional resources. If you spend your life fighting every accusation, every insult, and every manipulation attempt, eventually you will become exhausted. Your mind was not created to carry constant emotional warfare. Peace is a form of power. Some people think strong individuals are those who always have the final word. But truly strong people are often the ones who no longer feel the need to prove themselves to everyone. They understand that silence can communicate confidence more powerfully than endless explanations. A wise person asks themselves an important question before entering any argument. Will this conversation produce peace, understanding, or growth? If the answer is no, silence may be the better choice. This does not mean you become passive or voiceless. It means you become selective. You stop giving your energy to chaos. You stop trying to force understanding from people committed to misunderstanding you. And this is where emotional freedom begins. The moment you stop needing to win every argument, you begin protecting your inner peace. The moment you stop reacting to every provocation, you begin mastering your emotions. And the moment you master your emotions, manipulation begins losing its power over you. Never forget this. Wisdom is not always speaking at the right time. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when silence is the highest form of intelligence. One of the greatest mistakes people make when dealing with a narcissist is believing they must constantly explain themselves in order to be understood. They think if they just use the right words, the right tone, the right emotion, or the right evidence, the narcissist will finally understand their heart. But what many fail to realize is this: some people are not misunderstanding you because they are confused. They are misunderstanding you because it gives them power. There is a major difference between a person who lacks understanding and a person who rejects understanding. A healthy person listens to understand. A narcissistic person often listens to respond, manipulate, defend, or control. That is why you can spend hours explaining your feelings, your intentions, your pain, and your perspective, only to leave the conversation emotionally exhausted while nothing changes. You must understand something powerful. Your peace is more valuable than being understood by people committed to twisting your truth. Many people lose their emotional stability because they are addicted to being validated. They feel uncomfortable when someone sees them incorrectly. They panic when someone misunderstands their intentions. They become desperate to correct every accusation, every rumor, and every false assumption. But emotional maturity teaches you that not every misunderstanding requires a defense. Sometimes silence is the highest level of confidence. A narcissist often creates confusion intentionally. They may twist your words, deny conversations that happened, exaggerate your mistakes, or accuse you of things you never did. Why? Because confusion weakens confidence. The more emotionally unstable you become, the easier you are to control. This is why they want you constantly defending yourself. The moment you enter endless explanations, you enter their battlefield. And on that battlefield, the goal is not clarity. The goal is exhaustion. They want you emotionally drained. They want you doubting yourself. They want you spending your energy proving your innocence while they avoid accountability. But wisdom changes the game. Wisdom realizes that your value does not decrease simply because someone refuses to recognize it. Your truth does not become weaker because someone denies it. Your character is not destroyed because someone spreads lies about you. There are people who will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you speak. There are people who will twist kindness into weakness, boundaries into selfishness, silence into guilt, and confidence into arrogance. If you spend your life trying to correct every false perception, you will lose your peace-chasing approval that was never available in the first place. You must learn to stop fighting for acceptance in places where manipulation lives. One of the strongest signs of personal growth is becoming comfortable with being misunderstood by unhealthy people. That requires emotional discipline because human nature wants to defend itself. Human nature wants to say, that is not true about me. Human nature wants to prove innocence. But not every battle deserves your participation. Sometimes the most powerful statement is refusing to argue with distortion. A lion does not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Likewise, a mature person does not destroy their emotional health trying to force toxic people to understand their heart. There comes a moment where you must decide what matters more, your peace or their approval. Because the truth is, some people only feel powerful when they keep you emotionally explaining yourself. They enjoy watching you become frustrated. They enjoy watching you defend your motives. They enjoy watching you emotionally react. Why? Because every reaction gives them evidence that they still have influence over your emotions. But healing changes a person. A healed person no longer feels the need to attend every argument they are invited to. A healed person understands that silence can protect emotional stability better than endless explanations ever could. They understand that peace is not found in convincing toxic people. Peace is found in accepting reality and protecting your spirit from unnecessary conflict. This does not mean you become cold or bitter. It means you become wise. It means you stop over-investing emotional energy into people committed to misunderstanding you. Never allow someone to pull you into emotional chaos just because they refuse accountability. Never sacrifice your mental peace trying to force honesty into someone who benefits from deception. Your life will eventually speak louder than your defense. Character speaks over time. Consistency speaks over time. Integrity speaks over time. You do not need to scream your truth to people determined to reject it. Time has a way of revealing reality. And one of the greatest forms of freedom is reaching the point where you no longer need everyone to understand you in order to remain at peace within yourself. One of the clearest signs of emotional maturity is learning how to protect your boundaries without feeling guilty for it. A narcissist often becomes uncomfortable the moment you begin to establish limits because boundaries remove their access to control. As long as they can interrupt your peace, demand your energy, manipulate your emotions, and dominate your time, they feel powerful. But the moment you start saying no, the relationship changes. Suddenly, they can no longer move through your life without resistance, and that is why boundaries threaten them. Many people do not realize that narcissists interpret kindness as permission. If you constantly explain yourself, tolerate disrespect, and sacrifice your emotional well-being just to keep peace, they slowly begin to believe they are entitled to unlimited access to you. They may expect immediate responses, emotional availability at all hours, endless forgiveness, and complete control over conversations and decisions. And if you try to step back, they often react with anger, guilt trips, silent treatment, or emotional manipulation. This is why boundaries are necessary for emotional survival. A healthy person respects your limits because they respect you as a person. But a narcissist often sees boundaries as obstacles standing in the way of their control. The moment you say, "I will not tolerate disrespect," they may accuse you of being difficult. The moment you say, "I need space," they may call you selfish. The moment you refuse manipulation, they may act like you are the problem. Why? Because control becomes harder when you develop self-respect. You must understand something powerful. Every strong boundary begins with believing you deserve peace. Many people remain trapped in toxic cycles because they fear disappointing others. They fear conflict. They fear rejection. So they continue saying yes while their soul is exhausted. They continue giving while their spirit is empty. They continue tolerating behavior that slowly destroys their confidence. But a person who never establishes boundaries eventually loses their identity trying to keep everyone else comfortable. You cannot build a peaceful life while allowing constant emotional invasion. There are people who will drain your energy and then blame you for being tired. There are people who will disrespect your time and then become angry when you protect it. There are people who will cross lines repeatedly and then accuse you of overreacting when you finally respond. This is why emotional intelligence is not simply about understanding others. It is also about understanding what you should no longer tolerate. A narcissist often depends on your emotional reactions. They study your guilt, they study your compassion, they study your fear of conflict. And once they recognize that you struggle to enforce boundaries, they continue pushing further and further. What begins as small disrespect eventually becomes emotional control. This is why silence becomes powerful when protecting boundaries. You do not always need long explanations. You do not need endless debates to justify your peace. Sometimes silence is the clearest message. Sometimes walking away communicates more strength than arguing ever could. When you stop over-explaining your decisions, you stop giving manipulators opportunities to twist your words. There is power in calmness. Imagine a person who remains firm without anger, quiet without fear, and peaceful without needing approval. That person becomes difficult to manipulate because their decisions are no longer controlled by emotional pressure. Narcissists often expect emotional chaos. They expect you to defend yourself desperately, cry for understanding, or argue endlessly. But when you become emotionally disciplined, their usual strategies begin to fail. Never feel guilty for protecting your mental peace. You are allowed to say no without explanation. You are allowed to distance yourself from toxic behavior. You are allowed to protect your energy from people who constantly drain it. You are allowed to choose silence instead of conflict. And most importantly, you are allowed to value your emotional health even when others misunderstand your decision. Many people believe love requires endless tolerance, but real love cannot exist where respect is absent. Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship. Without respect, what remains is manipulation, control, and emotional exhaustion. The truth is that boundaries do not destroy healthy relationships. They reveal unhealthy ones. The people who truly care about you may not always agree with your boundaries, but they will respect them. A narcissist, however, often becomes angry because your boundaries remove their ability to control your emotions. That reaction alone reveals their intentions. You must stop believing that peace comes from keeping everyone happy. Peace comes from alignment. Peace comes from self-respect. Peace comes from refusing to betray your emotional well-being just to avoid confrontation. A strong person is not someone who tolerates unlimited disrespect. A strong person is someone who knows their value enough to protect it. And there is something deeply powerful about a person who can remain calm while enforcing boundaries. No shouting, no bitterness, no revenge. Just clarity, just wisdom, just quiet strength. Because the moment you stop allowing people to misuse your kindness, you begin reclaiming your life. Self-control is one of the rarest forms of strength in the world today. Most people believe strength is loud. They think power means dominating conversations, proving people wrong, reacting quickly, or getting revenge against those who hurt them. But true strength is much deeper than that. Real strength is the ability to remain calm when someone is trying to provoke you. It is the ability to control your emotions when another person is attempting to control your reactions. And nowhere is this more important than when dealing with a narcissist. A narcissist studies emotional weakness carefully. They observe what frustrates you, what hurts you, and what causes you to lose balance. They understand that if they can control your emotions, they can eventually influence your decisions. That is why they constantly create situations designed to pull reactions out of you. They may insult you, disrespect you, lie about you, ignore you, or provoke you intentionally. Their goal is not peace. Their goal is emotional domination. Many people fall into this trap because reacting feels natural. When someone attacks your character, your first instinct is to defend yourself. When someone disrespects you, your emotions want retaliation. When someone manipulates you, you feel the urge to expose them immediately. But emotional reactions often create more damage than wisdom ever would. This is why self-control becomes your greatest protection. A person without self-control becomes easy to manipulate. Every emotion controls them. Every insult moves them. Every opinion shakes them. Their peace depends on the behavior of other people. But a disciplined person operates differently. They understand that not every battle deserves their energy. They understand that protecting their peace is more important than proving a point. One of the greatest signs of maturity is learning how to pause before reacting. A narcissist expects instant emotional responses. They expect anger. They expect desperation. They expect emotional chaos. But when you remain calm, you interrupt their strategy. Your calmness becomes uncomfortable to them because they can no longer predict or control your behavior. There is enormous power in emotional discipline. Think about this carefully. Every time you react emotionally, you give another person information about your weaknesses. But when you maintain self-control, you keep your emotions protected. You stop giving toxic people access to your inner world. Self-control does not mean you feel nothing. It does not mean you are weak, passive, or afraid. It means you have developed enough inner strength to refuse emotional slavery. It means your emotions serve your wisdom instead of controlling your actions. Many people destroy their lives in moments of emotional reaction. A few angry words can damage relationships permanently. One emotional decision can create years of regret. One uncontrolled reaction can give a narcissist exactly the evidence they need to paint you as unstable while they appear innocent. This is why wisdom always values restraint. A calm person sees clearly. An emotional person sees temporarily. When emotions rise too high, judgment becomes weak. This is exactly why narcissists create emotional pressure. Confused people are easier to manipulate. Angry people are easier to control. Hurt people are easier to deceive. But a person with self-control becomes dangerous to manipulation because they think before they react. They observe before they respond. They refuse to allow temporary emotions to create permanent consequences. There is also something important you must understand about revenge. Many people believe revenge will heal their pain. They believe hurting the narcissist back will finally bring satisfaction. But revenge often keeps you emotionally connected to the very person you are trying to escape. Bitterness chains your mind to the past. Anger keeps emotional wounds alive. Self-control, however, creates freedom. The moment you stop needing revenge to feel powerful, you rise above manipulation completely. Your healing no longer depends on someone else suffering. Your peace no longer depends on someone apologizing. Your strength no longer depends on winning arguments. That is real freedom. A disciplined mind is difficult to break because it is not controlled by temporary emotions. When you master self-control, you stop reacting to every insult, every accusation, and every act of manipulation. You begin choosing peace over chaos, wisdom over pride, and discipline over emotional impulse. And the truth is this: the narcissist often expects you to lose control because chaos is their environment. But when you remain calm, patient, and emotionally grounded, you expose something powerful: their inability to control you anymore. Never underestimate the power of emotional discipline. A person who controls themselves becomes unstoppable. Because when you can control your emotions, no manipulator can easily control your life.